well, what do you want? We were saying, well, what is the best thing that could happen to you right now? And we were both really surprised when the answer came back across the board. We just need an internet connection.
Well, I want to welcome everyone to this mini podcast from the Scheherazade Foundation and to welcome my co-founder of Scheherazade Foundation and my great friend, Jason Webster. And we wanted to talk today about a new initiative that we've started at Scheherazade called Azada Women, which um, is the Dari word for, well, you tell me, Jason, can you explain it?
Yeah, we chose the word Azada women or Azada from the Dari because it means free and independent in Dari Persian. And so it just seemed like absolutely the perfect word because that is exactly what Afghan women are not at the moment. And this is what we're trying to promote. This is what we want to try and help Afghan women achieve in some small way.
Exactly. And I've just been sitting here thinking about my family's associations with Afghanistan. And as you know, my father, the writer Idris Shah, spent a lot of his life, championing Afghan culture and just the amazing way that Afghans think and do things, and in particular through their folklore and their stories, and through characters like Mullah Nasruddin, the wise fool of Oriental folklore. And I've got goosebumps just thinking about Mullah Nasruddin right now. I grew up with him and with the stories of Afghanistan, and also with the sense that in so many ways, Afghanistan, certainly throughout my lifetime, has been a forgotten chunk of the world, a forgotten culture, a forgotten landscape. And it seems that although it came into stark focus after 9/11, it seems to me that yet again, Afghanistan is being forgotten. But more than that, it's the women and the girls of Afghanistan this time round that are being not only forgotten, but challenged like never before. Maybe could you outline a little bit about the situation as it stands today?
Yeah, well, as everyone knows, the Taliban came back into power in Afghanistan, what is it, 4 or 5 years ago now, and completely turned the country around and they're reforming it in their own image, which, as we know, is this very strict, hardline, and very austere, extremely austere version of Islam, where music is banned, art is banned, and women are very much at the bottom of the pile, bottom of the hierarchy. And so we've got a situation now where 20 million women and girls in Afghanistan are effectively living in a kind of prison camp. And that's an extraordinary fact and something that is forgotten. As you say, Afghanistan is often forgotten. And the fact that there are as many people as that living in these conditions simply by virtue of their gender in this day and age is shocking beyond words. I think we tend to see in the news, the latest things that are happening here, there, and everywhere because they're new. And it's the clue is in the word, the news, right? The news tells us what's happening that's new. It's not very good at telling us maybe what's important, but isn't a new development, something that's just sort of been bubbling away for quite some time, and something that is as outrageous as the situation of the women and girls of Afghanistan. So, yeah, Azada Women, this initiative from the Scheherazade Foundation, is born out of our concern and just a sense of disbelief, I think, at how women are living in Afghanistan today, and just some little effort that we could make to try and create like a little chink, maybe a tiny little chink of light in the prison walls that surround women and
You
girls in
know,
Afghanistan at
yeah,
present.
Jason, I mean, that's so accurate and right. And I think if we all pause for a second and look around us, and maybe some people listening to this will be at home with their families or I don't know, in a car or transport or in a city center, in a cafe. I'd like people just to pause for a second and look around them and see what is their normal and see what they take for granted. We take for granted that we can leave the house. We take for granted that we can go to a cafe and drink a coffee or go to a shop or walk down the street alone without a chaperone, without a male relative to give, authority to your
Mm,
going out, to your freedom. We take for granted that we can listen to music, we can send messages, we can communicate with the outside world. We take for granted all of these things that are our normal. They're our freedom, and they're they are at the forefront of our lives. And over the last weeks and months, you and I and others in our team have been communicating, as you know, with women in Afghanistan, and the situation is so indescribable and so, I'm going to use the word bizarre,
mm.
because this is a situation that should not, and in a way, I'd even think it would be impossible to exist. Yesterday, I was chatting to an Afghan woman in Herat. I'm not going to use her real name. I'm going to call her Fatima. And she broke down crying on the call. And she just said, it is so hard what we are going through. And I may have thought, oh, come on, how hard could it be? But I've been learning more and more about the trials, the tribulations of ordinary Afghan women. And their normal is this thing that you would only ever find in a movie. This is something the entire world has to know about. But for now, our sense is, as you know, to help through Azada Women in doing a very, very simple task. Maybe can you explain what that is?
Yeah, I mean, what was fascinating, there've been some really moving moments in our research for this and the development of this project, and looking at the artworks that these young women have been doing in secret. They could be flogged if they were found out simply by just doing a drawing in their own home, or the statements that they gave to us, just saying, "Oh gosh, this is so moving for us to know that somebody still cares about us, still cares about Afghan women and girls." And then the most extraordinary thing, I think you will remember when we were talking, and it's like, well, what do you want? We were saying, well, what is the best thing that could happen to you right now? And we were both really surprised when the answer came back across the board. We just need an internet connection. And I'm getting a sort of shiver down my spine just thinking about it, because it's like, oh my God, this is something else that we take for granted so much. And for them, it's like just having that connection to the internet. It can be really cheap. It could be as little as $5 a month to have an internet connection on their phone. And yet, if you are not allowed to work to earn money, if you're not allowed to go out, if finding those $5 just to get an internet connection, $10 to get an internet connection for a month, that is almost mission impossible in itself. And so, what is extraordinary is that you and I, we both know that there are quite a lot of resources out there on the internet for Afghan women and girls. There are whole courses designed for them. There are, because they're not allowed to go to school after the age of 5, inside Afghanistan, there are whole educational courses for them to carry on their learning and their education beyond the age of 5. There are a huge number of resources out there which are fantastic. But what use are these resources if the women of Afghanistan can't even access them in the first place, because they can't afford just the $5 to $10 a month it would take for them to have that connection to the internet? And so I think, I was probably speaking for both of us, we were bowled over when we heard this. It just seemed so simple, a problem that could be fixed, and we found a way, and there is a way for the Scheherazade Foundation to put money onto women's phones anonymously. No names need to be exchanged. No information, personal information needs to be exchanged here. It can all be done very, very securely, because obviously that is paramount in this whole project that we're setting up. It's like, how do we give the women of Afghanistan what they need, what they're desperately calling out for, which is just simply an internet connection, and keep them safe at the same time. So we found a way of doing this. We can create these sort of cell networks inside Afghanistan. Everything is done by word of mouth. Everything is done on trust. And obviously, it's in nobody's interest for this to sort of break out and become known to the wider authorities. So that's built in, and the anonymity is there from the very beginning. And so what we're doing is we've set up a crowdfunder for this, and we're just asking for donations from people, because $100 could give one woman in Afghanistan access to the internet for 1 year. That's it, $100, one woman, 1 year's internet access.
And Jason, sorry to break in, but what has really struck me? It's this. When I talk to Afghan women online about Azada and Azada Women, about this idea of providing internet, I'm overwhelmed by just the excitement. And it's almost like, we've used the analogy before between us with clean drinking water, that the internet now isn't just, it isn't this fanciful, far-flung piece of tech. It's a necessity for life. But what I've noticed when I talk to Afghan women, they are like, oh my God, that would be the greatest dream, to be able. And it's not just, it's not people saying to me, oh, I could watch movies on YouTube. Never. I've never heard that. What I've heard is, wow, I could learn English, or I could perfect my English, or I could learn German or French, or I could take a course in XYZ. And
Or I
yesterday,
could work,
or I could get employment.
yeah.
Exactly. I get the sense that a lot of them they don't want to, roll over and shut up. They want to use this time a little bit like a lot of us did during lockdown, during the pandemic. A lot of people learned languages. A lot of people took courses. A lot of people pushed themselves in ways that they never thought was possible. And I get the sense that this time under the Taliban 2.0 in Afghanistan is kind of a time for Afghan women and girls to really excel, just to prepare themselves for the future.
Yeah, and I think that COVID analogy is brilliant, because the point being that most of us during COVID lent very, very heavily on the internet. The internet became absolutely central to our lives to carry on with some kind of normality as much as we could. That is precisely what Afghan women don't have. They're in a kind of lockdown, harsher, much harsher than anything that was experienced in the rest of the world during COVID, and they barely have any internet because they can't afford it. And it is really cheap by our standards. It's cheap. All they need is just that little bit of money that can help them access the internet and access all the opportunities that are out there for them. It really is a no-brainer, and it's very simple, very easy to do.
Can you remind anyone watching this how they can get to the crowdfunder and find out about Azada Women?
Sure, they can go to our website, which is sf.charity, and on the homepage there, you'll find a link to our Azada Women page, and also to the crowdfunder campaign, which we're running here in the UK. So yeah, please, if you hear this and this resonates with you, please check that out and do what you can, or share this video. Anything you can to spread the word of this campaign is going to help hundreds, maybe thousands of Afghan women and girls.